Thank you, Joanna, and hello, everyone. I'm Genevieve Melford, Director of Insights and Evidence for Aspen FSP. And as you know, we've just released a new report on what our field has learned about household financial security in the past 5 years and what we can all focus on over the next 5 years to make the biggest difference in people's financial lives. What I'm going to do in my remarks today is walk us through one part of that report, our new framework for financial security. We started this work by reviewing what Aspen, FSP, and others in our field have learned about financial security over the past 5 years, and I'll share a few of those key insights in just a moment. We then used this research to develop a framework to think about how money moves into and through households and what the essential components are of the conditions that provide financial security. Doing this allows all of us to dig into each area of the framework, to apply it to the households that we serve, and to see how they're doing in each area, and where things aren't going well, to think about targeted approaches that could help. So just to quickly get us all on the same page, what do we mean by financial security? So when I say we have a framework for financial security, what are we trying to get at? So in our work, we've adopted the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's consumer-driven definition of financial well-being as our North Star. So you'll hear me using the terms financial security and financial well-being interchangeably. In a nutshell, financial security means having enough money and resources to comfortably meet your needs and obligations, protect you from shocks, pursue your goals, and enjoy life, both in the present and in the future. We think of financial security as an outcome goal, a state of being that exists when the key components are in place. So what are those components? Our review of research provides 3 key insights that really guide us here. The first is that cash flow, by which I mean a household's income minus their expenses, is the foundation of financial life. We see that income and expense changes are what drives changes in financial security over time. Things like gaining employment, a raise or a promotion, or simply more predictable and less volatile income are key factors found to increase financial health and well-being. On the other hand, losing a job or having hours reduced or facing a major medical or other expense are key predictors of declining financial health and well-being. The second insight is that liquid savings are a particularly valuable barometer of financial security. Early research by the CFPB found that liquid savings is the single variable most highly correlated with financial well-being, more so even than income. And to me, this actually makes intuitive sense because savings can be seen as both an outcome of having routinely positive cash flow and as a key form of financial stability in its own right. Not only do readily accessible savings protect against material hardship, but they also provide the material resources and the mental bandwidth for people to be able to weather smaller financial shocks without getting knocked off track from their work toward longer-term goals. And several recent studies confirm that indeed having higher levels of liquid saving protects against declines in financial health and well-being in the face of relatively limited kind of routine expense shocks. But the final insight is that despite the clear value of liquid savings, people actually cannot fully insure themselves all the time. And that means that safety nets are essential for everyone. So research shows that while liquid savings and other personal resources are incredibly valuable, they can't protect your financial security against larger or more persistent shocks like job loss or major medical expenses. One recent study found that even the most financially responsible people, the people whose behavior generally leads to higher financial security and well-being, even those folks are no more protected against the loss of financial security in the face of really major financial shocks than anyone else. So kind of even the most perfect financial behavior is not going to protect you when these major situations occur. So what that implies is that broader safety nets provided by government, employers, and other institutions are a necessary complement to the personal safety nets that people develop through their own ingenuity, efforts, and access to income-producing opportunities. And the importance of social safety nets is clearly enormous today. I mean, I know that to this audience, this almost goes without saying, right? I mean, this spring, over 30 million people found themselves suddenly out of work. And that's an example of the kind of shock that virtually no one can protect themselves against. So it's a perfect example of what social safety nets are for. So moving from the insights to the framework, what we did is we took those 3 insights that I just talked through and we put them together with everything else we've learned over the past 5 years about things like income volatility, consumer debt, retirement security, and even the role that housing, caregiving, and other foundational arrangements play in people's financial lives. And what we see is that financial security rests on 3 interconnected pillars. The first pillar, routinely positive cash flow, is the foundation. When people reliably have more income from any source or combination of sources than the cost of meeting their basic needs, then they can pay their bills and still have extra money to put into savings. The second pillar is personal financial resources, your financial cushions and your wealth. And research shows that this pillar is critical for maintaining stability in the face of smaller income or expense shocks. And it also provides the resources that people can invest in family well-being, asset building, and economic mobility. When cash flow is reliably positive, people can build savings and wealth. You can see kind of the arrow going from cash flow to personal resources, right? When it's positive, you can just move the money over there. And you can use personal resources to invest in various ways to produce more income or reduce ongoing expenses, thereby increasing your cash flow and your choice and your security. So that's really a virtuous cycle. But when income does not reliably cover core cost of living expenses and allow for saving, right? So when your cash flow is not positive, the consequences are often unmanageable debt, late fees, and a whole host of other expenses that further weaken your cash flows in a vicious cycle of financial stress and instability, right? So this, when it's all working as it should, it's terrific, but when it's not, it can really spiral out of control, as we see for far too many people. So the third pillar is public and private benefits, and that's really equally critical to the first 2. A wide range of public, employer, and third-party benefits, and we give a number of specific examples of what we mean by those kinds of benefits in our report. These benefits can provide households with income, they can reduce cost of living expenses, and they can support household wealth building and economic mobility. And they can therefore strengthen the other 2 pillars and protect households from risks too big to self-insure against. So the big takeaway here is that households need some combination of all 3 of these pillars to build and maintain financial security. They work together, so we have to consider the strength of all 3 of them. We really can't look at any one in isolation. Our new report provides a detailed assessment of the state of each of these 3 pillars. So let me just give you the big picture takeaway. The state of financial security in America is not good. And fundamentally, that's because many Americans don't have even the first pillar, routinely positive cash flow. And that's because cost of living expenses have risen for decades, but real wages for the typical worker have not, right? So that really puts a squeeze on household cash flows. And as a result, nearly half of all US households did not have income that exceeded their expenses last year in 2019, a problem made worse by the fact that average households have had persistently volatile incomes month to month for years. When we look at the state of public and private benefits, that third pillar, what we see is that they tend to provide far more robust support in reality to higher income households than to everyone else. So they're not delivering the broad set of foundational supports for financial security that we can see kind of in all of those arrows going up, all the ways they can boost the other 2 pillars. They're not really doing that for most households. And the result of these trends is that most households have too much debt and not enough savings, rather than the robust personal resources that are so critical for resilience and for mobility. So that's the bad news. But the good news is that with this framework in hand to diagnose and pinpoint exactly which components of financial security are missing, leaders in all sectors can boost access to different aspects of the pillars. Some leaders can boost labor income, others benefits income or capital income. They can reduce various cost of living expenses. They can help people capture net income and turn it into savings. That's not always the most straightforward thing for households to do. They can invest in household balance sheets and help households reduce burdensome debt. And they can provide group and social insurance to protect households in the face of life's big shocks. So there are so many things that different leaders can do. Making these ideas real will look different for different leaders, and it will likely require different ways of working together, with a laser focus on strengthening the systems that can boost household cash flows and balance sheets and protect households from the big risks outside their control. I'm excited to hear how our next speakers are thinking about these ideas. So with that, I'll turn it back to Joanna, who will lead our next discussion.